Donatella Versace is to step down from her role as creative director at the fashion house Versace after nearly 30 years. She took over the role in 1997 after the murder of her brother Gianni and has overseen hundreds of fashion campaigns. She'll take on a new role as an ambassador for the brand. The castle in North Wales, used for the series I'm a Celebrity, is set for a makeover. It was used in 2020 when COVID restrictions meant contestants couldn't travel to Australia. The Preservation Trust says a restoration of the site will make it watertight for the first time in 30 years. And the Duchess of Sussex is launching a new podcast called Confessions of a Female Founder. The project will feature conversations with female business leaders about their lives and will be released next month.
Our headlines today. A new law is needed to tackle loners planning mass murder, but a government advisor says there should be no change to the definition of terrorism after the Southport attack.
Less regulation and a smaller civil service, they're among the Prime Minister's plans as he pledges to fundamentally reshape the state.
Calls for stronger guidance around earwax removal. With fewer GPs offering services, more people are turning to unchecked private operators or DIY options.
And welcome to the Science Museum in London, where we are T-minus 50 minutes away from blasting off the new Scout Space Badge.
Good morning. Do you sell lots of stuff online, earn some extra cash on the side? Thousands of people who do just that are about to get a letter from the tax office.
Do you have a side hustle? Selling your clothes online, perhaps? Do you know that you may have to pay tax on your extra earnings?
Thousands of people are about to get a letter about all of this stuff, Ben. Quite a lot of people do this, don't they? Bits and bobs, a bit of selling stuff on the side.
Yeah, the difference is, and when things are not what they seem, or is it a side hustle, is it not, that is what determines whether you have to pay tax. And it's all about how much you're making from doing it. Let me explain the rules and why people may be getting a letter. Good morning. What we're talking about is side hustles. That's any income you make from doing something outside your main job. It could be reselling clothes online, dog walking, gardening, that sort of thing. If you earn more than £1,000 a year from it, then you may have to pay tax on those earnings. And if you sell more than 30 items or earn more than £1,700 in a year selling things online, the law now requires platforms like Vinted and eBay to report that to the tax office. And HMRC wants to make sure that people like Becky are paying any tax they may owe. So it has sent about 6,000 letters out to people that it thinks have earned income from selling through online marketplaces. There is an important change that is being planned, though. This week, the Treasury says that it intends to allow people to earn more from side hustles before they're required to file a full tax return, a full self-assessment tax return. At the moment, that's triggered if you earn over £1,000. It intends to raise that to £3,000. The tax obligations, this is important, the tax obligations will remain the same, but the government estimates that change would save around 300,000 people from having to fill out the long paperwork for a self-assessment return, instead being able to use a simpler, shorter online reporting and payment system.
Let's have a look at today's papers for you, some of the front pages. Starting with The Guardian, suggesting the Prime Minister could face his biggest rebellion so far on plans to reduce welfare spending. The paper says it understands dozens of MPs have urged the government to reconsider.
The Telegraph, meanwhile, is reporting that President Trump has threatened to devastate Russia's economy if it rejects a proposed 30-day ceasefire with Ukraine. In the Daily Mirror, President Trump also appears on the front of the paper after declaring 25% tariffs on all steel and aluminium imports into the US. The paper says the tariffs have prompted fears of job losses in the UK steel industry. And the Daily Express is leading on the Queen's letter of support to Giselle Pellico, whose ex-husband was jailed for 20 years in December for drugging and raping her and inviting dozens of men to also abuse her for nearly a decade. It says Her Majesty sent the personal message after feeling tremendously affected by the story.
Just having a look through some of the inside pages, it's always reassuring, isn't it, when you see a story about the authorities and the emergency services reacting quickly and efficiently to an alert, OK? So, Royal Navy's bomb disposal squad was scrambled after potential ordnance was found on a Dorset beach. So someone had seen something on a Dorset beach, a little piece of metal that they thought to be an unexploded bomb. So they called the Coast Guard. Coast Guard called the Royal Navy. They dispatched the bomb disposal team. They go and investigate. It was an upturned saucepan that was slightly covered in sand.
You can't be too careful.
But the point being that, albeit that wasn't a risk to anyone of any particular nature, apart from you might fall over it, the Coast Guard always... The Coast Guard quoted here saying, we ask people if they come across something on the beach that might be an unexploded bomb to not touch it, call 999 and ask for the Coast Guard. And if it ends up being an upturned saucepan, they don't mind that. They'd rather, you know, go through the process of checking
safety first.
what it actually is.
Who's taking the saucepan to the beach? Do you think it's a camping, leftover from camping or something?
Well, there could be any number of answers to that. It could have been a
washed
a yacht could have been going past and got washed,
your mind goes to yacht,
off.
my mind goes to beach camping. That says a lot about us, Charlie.
Could have been sausages, couldn't it, on the beach? Could have been that. Any number of answers. Hadn't really thought about it like that. Just 45 days to go until the 45th London Marathon. We're taking a look at why the event is the most popular in the world and speaking to a runner who's completed the 26.2-mile course every year since 1981.
Wow, hats off to every single one of them.
At 6, surprise as the Prime Minister announces that NHS England, the body that runs England's health service, is being scrapped. Thousands of administrative jobs will go. Hundreds of millions more for frontline care in England, says the government. We'll be asking what impact it'll have for patients. Our other main story tonight. President Putin says he supports the idea of a temporary ceasefire in Ukraine, but there are many details that need to be discussed. This was President Trump's response.
A lot of the details of a final agreement have actually been discussed. Now we're going to see whether or not Russia's there, and if they're not, it'll be a very disappointing moment for the world.
Questions over the safety of millions of children who play Roblox, one of the world's biggest gaming platforms. We hear from its boss. And the dancer who refused to give up, Stephen McRae, on his unprecedented return to the Royal Ballet after 2 major injuries.
John Lewis says it will not pay a staff bonus for the 3rd year in the row, despite seeing annual profits triple. The employee-owned chain saw underlying profits hit £126 million this year. The group says it's prioritising overall pay and investment in the business. And a pill that treats endometriosis has been approved for use on the NHS. The drug could help around 1,000 women every year who have the debilitating gynecological condition. It will be available to women whose medical or surgical treatment has failed. 5-star legend Stedman Pearson has died at the age of 60. We reveal the scale of Welsh restaurants and takeaways displaying the wrong food safety ratings.